You ever have one of those moments where someone's arrogance is so big it practically echoes? That's exactly how it felt the morning Dylan tried to snatch my boat keys and called the cops without realizing he was calling them on the man who owned the marina. The look on his face when the officer read the sign behind me, "Private Property Blue Harbor Marina," was worth every headache that came before it. But the truth is, that day was just the end of a long, ridiculous war I never asked for. When I bought this old stretch of waterfront a couple years ago, all I wanted was peace. After 20 years in the Coast Guard, I'd had my fill of alarms orders and noise. I wanted mornings with coffee and the sound of gulls, evenings where the only schedule I kept was the sun setting. The place was perfect weathered boathouse, a few slips, and a small cabin that smelled like pine and salt. I bought it under an LLC to keep things quiet. Figured I'd blend in, maybe help the community when I could. But peace doesn't last long when people crave control more than harmony. Enter Marcia Dalton, self-appointed queen of the Lakeshore Estates, HOA. The kind of woman who wore pearls to mow her lawn and used words like visual cohesion to describe her neighbors' trash bins. And then there was her son, Dylan, 20-something tanned smug, the sort of kid who thinks being loud is the same as being in charge. Together they ran the neighborhood like a petty kingdom, and when they saw my truck hauling a boat down to the dock that first week, I became their new project. It started small. Dylan parked his pickup across the boat ramp claiming authorized personnel only. Marcia stopped by my gate with a clipboard rattling off community regulations about boat sizes and noise levels. I just smiled, thanked her, and went back to work. But I made a note. Always make a note. When someone's that eager to play sheriff, they usually write their own downfall. Soon enough, Dylan printed himself a laminated badge that read, "Community Dock Officer." I wish I was kidding. He started handing out fake fines to residents' handwritten slips for unauthorized parking and dock access violations. What shocked me was that people actually paid them. Fear's a funny thing. It only takes one loud person with a clipboard to make everyone else fall in line. So I kept my mouth shut and my cameras rolling. Years on the water taught me that the best defense isn't anger, it's evidence. The morning everything boiled over, I was polishing the hull when I saw Dylan storming down the dock like he was boarding an enemy vessel. "We're confiscating your keys," he said, puffing his chest. "You violated HOA policy again." I didn't even look up. "That's so. What's the crime this time?" "Improper storage," he said confidently. "Anchor lines loose." I couldn't help but laugh. "You came all the way down here for that?" Behind him, Marcia's voice carried over the water. "Don't talk back to him, Daniel. You've already been warned 3 times. I wiped my hands on a rag, locked eyes with Dylan, and said calm as could be. "You even know who owns this dock?" "Of course," he said. "The HOA does. My mom runs it." He reached for the keys clipped to my belt. I stepped aside just enough for him to stumble forward. "Touch that again," I told him quietly, "and you'll be paying for a new paint job." He laughed. "You threatening me, I'll call the cops," Marcia shouted from the hill. "Do it, Dylan." So he did. 10 minutes later, a squad car pulled up, lights flashing across the lake like a bad omen. The officer stepped out, listened to Dylan's story about a hostile man refusing to comply with HOA authority, then turned toward me. I didn't say much, just handed him a folder with the Marina deed, business registration, and tax receipts. He walked over to the sign, half covered in vines, and read it out loud. "Private property, Blue Harbor Marina, owned by Clearwater Holdings." He turned back to Dylan. "You said this was HOA property." Dylan's face went pale. Marcia's smile cracked. I finally spoke. "Officer, looks like we had a little misunderstanding. He called you on his boss." The silence after that was beautiful, the kind of silence that hums with justice. Words spread fast. By sunset, half the neighborhood knew the HOA had called the cops on the man who owned the docks. For a few days, things were quiet, too quiet. Then the letters started showing up. Fence paint must match HOA palette. Lighting exceeds lumens allowed. Each one more absurd than the last. I didn't reply. I just filed them away under evidence. At the next HOA meeting, I walked in calm, clipboard in hand. Marcia sat at the head table surrounded by her usual chorus of nodding neighbors. "We appreciate Mr. Landon's contributions," she said sweetly, "but the HOA still maintains oversight of all lakefront access." I placed a folded map on the table. "You might want to update your records. The Marina property line extends 30 feet past the dock. That includes the ramp you're trying to regulate." A murmur spread. Marcia's smile froze, but she didn't look down. "We'll review that with our attorney," she muttered. That night, I sat by the water with my coffee, watching her house lights across the cove. She'd lost face, and people like her don't take that well. I knew another storm was coming. Sure enough, a week later, a county inspector showed up laughing before he even introduced himself. You wouldn't believe the complaints we got: oil dumping, chemical leaks, noise violations. He ran a few tests, patted the railing, and said, "You're cleaner than a Navy dock." I thanked him and went back to polishing the boat rails while Marcia and Dylan glared from their SUV up the hill. That's when I realized they weren't going to stop. They were going to bury themselves trying. Soon they hosted a community awareness event across the cove. Flyers plastered every mailbox: "Expose illegal marina operations." They printed Dylan's number at the bottom for reporting suspicious activity. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. That was my turning point. I sent a single email to the State Maritime Office, the county, and the Coast Guard liaison. Attached every video, every letter, every fake fine. I didn't demand action. I just asked for an inspection. When the black SUVs rolled up that Friday morning, I was ready. Permits laid out everything spotless. My lawyer, Ellen, stood beside me with that look lawyers get when they already know the ending. The inspectors checked every bolt, every tank, every log. When it was over, one of them said, "Mr. Landon, this is the most organized marina we've seen all year." Marcia snapped, "That can't be right. We filed dozens of complaints." The inspector looked at her flatly. "Yes, ma'am. You filed them. And without evidence, that's harassment under county law. You could have heard a pin drop." He handed me a paper stamped in gold, verified private ownership and compliance. I bolted it right to the marina gate by noon. By sunset, people were stopping by just to read it, shaking their heads, clapping, laughing. It felt like the air itself was lighter. Then, just when I thought it was over, Dylan showed up a week later, not with his fake badge, but with an apology. "She's leaving," he said. "My mom sold the house." He looked broken, like a kid who finally realized the empire he helped build was made of cardboard. "She says you ruined her life," he mumbled. I shook my head. "She did that herself, son. I just stopped her from ruining everyone else's." He nodded quiet for once and asked, "Why didn't you sue us?" "Because peace is worth more than revenge," I said. "You'll get that someday." After that, he started coming by to fish. We didn't talk about the past. Sometimes silence says more than words ever could. A few weeks later, I got a letter in a plain envelope. No return address. It was Marcia's handwriting. I lost everything because I couldn't admit I was wrong. "You didn't destroy me. I destroyed myself. I hope the lake brings you peace. It never gave me any." I stood on the dock for a long while reading those lines. The water was calm. The air smelled like cedar and salt, and for the first time in years, I actually felt it. Peace. Real peace. A month later, Dylan brought over a wooden plaque. The words carved into it said, "Stillwater Marina, for those who found peace after the storm." I hung it by the entrance. Each morning when the sunlight hits it just right, it glows gold like the lake forgave us all. So yeah, I guess that's how it ended. Not with shouting, not with lawsuits, just with quiet. And maybe that's the lesson. You can't out-yell arrogance, but you can outlast it. Tell me what you think. Was I too patient? Or did I handle it right? Have you ever had a neighbor or HOA push you too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I've learned one thing for sure. Every community's got its own kind of storm. The trick is knowing when to fight and when to let the lake do the talking.